This is the Pathways to Greatness podcast, and I'm your host, Jeff Forrester. Welcome, everyone, to the Pathways to Greatness podcast. In today's episode, Harry Spaight joins me, and he's a friend, and we talk about it in the beginning of the episode that I've known for several years now, and I always enjoy our conversations, whether it be over recording or even when we've met live and had lunch together and broke bread. And he's just a great guy. I look up to him a lot, and I'm excited about you being able to hear the wisdom that he shares and his perspective. We go over a lot of great things in this conversation. One is his definition of greatness, which I really, really like. And it's just, where can we be better in life? And that's a great way, something to strive for, is just how to be better, how to make an impact on this world, and not just think about one aspect of being good in. So without further ado, Harry Spaight. Mr. Harry Spaight, we have been trying to do this, I think, since I started this in 2023. So here we are in, when this one comes out, it'll be July 30th of 2024. So it has been a little bit. So thank you for your patience.
Oh, this is great. I'm so thrilled to be here, Jeff. What is the good word?
Yeah, well, Thunderbird. That's the way I always reply to you. So everybody, this is Harry Spaight. We met one another through mutual friends. And I remember it was December of 2021 when we met. And I had just made the decision to not go back to work, meaning not go back to a W-2 formal position. And we met at a Starbucks, and we both brought our books with one another. And we both, I remember one of the things that I remember was a great conversation. And then I remember shortly after, we both parted ways, got in our cars, and I went, oh, I didn't get a picture. And not within seconds, I get a call, and it's Harry, and he goes, we forgot to get a selfie together. So we both turned around and we met us at a gas station and took a selfie together. So
that was the beginning of our blossoming friendship.
Yeah. And it's amazing. It's been 3 years. It feels like it was just yesterday.
Oh, I know it does.
Time flies. Yeah. Oh, okay. So if you've listened to the podcast, you know that I'm getting ready to play a game called Would You Rather. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay. Would you rather freeze time or go back in time?
I would rather go back in time.
Why so?
Well, it depends on where I could get to go, but I just was asked this question recently. But there are so many people to talk to throughout history that have made big impacts on history that I'm curious about that. And freezing time just doesn't excite me because it's what it is today. And being curiously minded, I think there's just a lot that the past has to offer, maybe sharing about the future. And yeah, so that would be definitely my choice.
So here's a follow-up question to that. So going back in time and meeting people who impacted time, who would you like to meet that would be a surprise to many people?
A surprise to people. So, I mean, being that we're here in the United States, I would like to talk to the founding fathers. I'd like to see, when we think of the founding fathers, this is what is to me amazing, is that these guys were founding young men. They were not, 60-year-old George Washington. They were people in their 20s and 30s that were coming up with the Constitution and what the beginning of the United States government. To me, it's just ridiculous that they put together all the things that they've learned. I mean, how brilliant they were. Of course, Ben Franklin, he was probably close to 70, so he was older. But a lot of these people, when you think about it, were not. And so just the ideas that must have been going through their minds, we're rebels, we're breaking free from our country. how are we going to do this? And, to see what kind of collaboration there was, what kind of animosity there was, the fighting that must have been going on, the viewpoints. It's just like, oh my God, to be a fly on the wall in those discussions to me would have been freaking amazing. And then to see the brilliance, right? When people complain about the United States, it's like, yeah, we may not be perfect, but look what's come out of this in the past couple hundred years. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And when you were talking, I was thinking about the vision and how big of a visionary that each one of those men were, and then also that they didn't get so into the weeds that it couldn't grow and prosper, that it was such a big vision that, like you said a second ago, that really worked really, really well for a long time. And now, you start to see, not to get into, which side of the aisle people are on, but you see where we're losing sight of what the vision of America was intended to be. And it's like we're reverting back to what we tried to get free from.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I'm a huge fan. I mean that I look at the United States government as a person, as a 200-year-old person, basically, and maybe 250 years old now, I guess. But it had to develop, right? You're learning things as people. We learn things as we age. We learn things in, historically what's good, maybe what isn't so good. But yeah, going back to those conversations to me, just, what got them to think that, we're not going to have a king, this type of government. If you look back, and I guess they used the Magna Charta and tried different things, different documents that they're looking at and saying, well, this is good here, but we could do better over here. It's like, I mean, these guys, what were their backgrounds that they're able to do this? I mean, I have a relative, an ancestor that was a Revolutionary War, eventually became a general, but he was in his 20s. And, I'm reading about him and thinking, here's a kid in his 20s that becomes a captain and is going after to get cannons out of upstate New York to fight in the Revolutionary War. It's like, because there are cannons from the French and Indian War. It's like, oh my God, they're doing this in the winter on horses and dragging cannons across ice. It's like, okay, these guys were possessed. They had a mission that they were going to start this country. And to me, it's a fascinating time. And, do I want to be there and have a lifespan of 40? Probably not. But I mean, to be able to go back and then come back to where I am today and tell my kids would be pretty cool.
Yes. Excellent. Fantastic answer. And so the next one is, would you rather live without music or TV?
Oh, definitely without TV. Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's so far, that's been, by a landslide. That's what most people would live without. Yeah. I'm torn. I think I could live without music. I love TV.
Yeah. It's interesting. What do you like about TV?
I like the visual aspect of just the storytelling, because I like music, but it's not, and music impacts me in a positive way, just like other people. I just don't like, I like to listen to it, but I'm not like into it. But I grew up, I don't know if you, I was trying to think of the name of the TV show and it just escaped my mind. Oh man. Anyways, so I grew up watching TV and movies. Like that was my escape and what I wanted to be, and many times my reality, because I just loved it so much. And I've learned and learning over the years, and I'm definitely a visual learner. So the fact that I get to see it, then I can put myself in that. And then I reference so many different elements of life to TV shows and movies that I've seen. And Like I could watch a movie over and over and over and have no problem.
Yeah.
And then remember the lines. So it's fun.
Yeah, you're one of those people that remembers lines, right? Oh my
Not
goodness.
as much as I used to, but growing up, oh my goodness, it was like because I'd watched the same movie probably 100 times.
What was one that you would watch a lot?
A couple that pop out is like Tommy Boy was one that I absolutely love. Doc Hollywood is one that surprises a lot of people with Michael J. Fox. That was such a wonderful movie. And then Star Wars, of course, the Indiana Jones trilogy, the Back to the Future trilogy. So a lot of those just had positive impact. And then growing up, my dad was big into watching movies after church. Like on TBS, we'd come home, my mom's making lunch, and he would sit there because that was the only day he didn't work, and we'd watch whatever war movie or Western that was on. And so that was like my moment to sit there. And TV was his escape too, because you could just sit down, but you could do that with music as well. But so I grew up with the TV in front of my face.
No, I get you. Me too. But I also just listening to music as much as I have listened to it over the years, that is going on so much in the background that I couldn't live without.
Sure. So let's say you're on one of your famous bike rides and it's a wonderful day. Like what's an artist or some songs that you would like to listen to when you're out cruising on your bike?
So I rarely listen to music when I'm out on my bike, believe it or not. I listen to podcasts. Or I also like silence when I'm on the bike. Because sometimes just constant noise and sound, you got to let the brain just kind of chill and enjoy nature a little bit. And I try to do that as well. So I love the education. I do love the music. I like the music that pumps me up and gets me fired up. So I'll find, some kind of music that fires me up. Lots of guitar music I love. And then, like my playlist though covers whether it be Kenny Chesney and Johnny Cash to Dave Matthews to 60s Rolling Stones and The Who to blues music. It's like I run as such a wide gamut of music on my playlist that I always have variety. But right now I'm into the 90s and Pearl Jam and Dave Matthews. And
that's awesome.
I can't get enough of this for whatever reason. It's just like, how did I miss the 90s? I must have been listening to the 70s and the 90s. And now it's, 30 years. I cannot believe I'm saying 30 years later, but now it's like 30 years later, I'm finding the 90s. So, yeah, those are my issues.
Totally get it. Okay, one more. Would you rather have pizza or tacos?
I'm definitely a huge fan of pizza. Yep. I love tacos, but pizza, crust, thin crust.
Toppings?
Toppings, I'm going to go with very, very minimal. Pepperoni, of course, mozzarella, but not a ton of mozzarella. So it's not oozing, dripping everywhere, but a nice display of mozzarella and a little basil would be the ideal pizza for me. And the pepperoni is not greasy. It's like the small. I'm holding up my little fingers here like a circle, but the smaller pepperonis, not the big rounder ones that are just kind of processed too much. I want the old school, sliced a little bit thicker pepperoni that's got little burnt edges and it's curled up. That's ideal.
There you go. There you go. What is one of your local favorite pizza joints that you go to?
Well, there's a few, but there's a Little Anthony's in Claremont that has almost like a cracker crust pizza. It's super thin. And man, that's just like eating air with toppings. I mean, it crunches so nicely. And then, nice toppings. And then there's a place called Chefing It Up that's a town over that does a really great job on it. But yeah, those are ideal for me.
That may be our next lunch spot is Little Anthony's. I'll drive out to you. Okay. And then one more before we get into the real meat of the podcast. So if you came with a warning label What would it say?
That everything that comes out of my mouth, do not take seriously. There's a lot of humor, and that just is in my mind. And I say things like without even thinking and I really, the older I get, the better I am at holding back. But there's still so many times, Jeff, where I am blurting out something saying, that wasn't smart. That could be viewed as offensive. I'm not thinking. Like today, a lady, well, I was at this network event, and this lady who does Mary Kay, and she said, so like instead of you trying on 11 or 12 lipsticks, and of course, I had to make some wisecrack remark, and I went, yeah, probably shouldn't have said that. Immediately, as soon as I said it, I went, oh, probably shouldn't have said that. And no one was offended, but it's just like, you got to be so careful these days that people be offended. And, I'm not always thinking about who won't be offended or who will be offended when I say this. I just say it, unfortunately.
All right. It's like, where's that
But
inner monologue?
Right, I'm getting better. But still, once in a while, this 6-year-old Harry comes out and blurts something out.
But that's part of your
charm.
charm.
With you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, that's part of your charm. And I've got another friend that's very similar, but that's how he makes friends. Everybody knows that it's not serious. It's not intended to be hateful or spiteful.
Yeah.
It's just how he operates. And none of it that he says is like cutting mean.
Right. Yeah.
It's like a sarcastic joke, but it's not, because I've been around people that they say mean things. They're like, well, I'm just joking. I'm like, yeah, but that's what you said. Just that went a little far, where it's finding that middle ground. And like you said earlier, it teaches us we have to be resilient and not be so offended by what someone said. And think about the founding 100%. Fathers.
Yeah. Right.
If they were offended, or if they were worried about offending somebody, we wouldn't have the United States of America.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. And you're right. It's not like if it's malicious, it's different.
Yes.
Right? If I was slipping up maliciously, that's totally different. So yeah, good point. Thank you for that.
No problem. Okay. So Harry, hopefully I will be bringing new people into the show because of your network. And then just to give you a recap of what Pathways to Greatness is, like I said earlier, I started this show in 2023, really with the encouragement of others, because I just want to make sure people see that there's different definitions of greatness. There are many different pathways to achieve greatness or just strive for greatness, because I don't believe that you ever truly achieve greatness. It's striving for that. And then ultimately bringing people on like yourself to share personal stories and tactics and things that have helped them on their pathway to greatness, because I don't want people to quit. I want to encourage them to press on. And by hearing other people's stories, as you know, because you're well read and you like to listen to podcasts, it gives you some hope when you go, that's exactly where I'm at right now. And so having a diversity of guests from different walks of life and different professions has been really fulfilling for me to have more of these conversations. And I know that this is going to be a great conversation, because we've had many conversations that have left me feeling energized and motivated to move forward. So with all that being said, Harry, what would you say your definition of greatness is?
Well, I'm going to go with greatness covers a wide range of aspects in life. And it's not just about greatness in business, but to me, it's, greatness is all encompassing. Mm-hmm. So how are you with your family? How are you with your neighbors? How are you in business? How are you with strangers? I was thinking, interestingly enough, I was in a home for seniors. It wasn't really a nursing home, but there are people that needed care that were there. And it was a business function. And so you could see the differences between the people who were in business that were there for an event and the people that lived there. And it caught me off guard that I was there more on the business side of things. But then as I looked around the room, people who are kind of not in the scene, so to speak, that live there were smiles on their face. And then I went, wait a minute, these are not just wall decorations here. These are people that had a livelihood, that lived their life, that are now on the tail end of it. And then it just dawned on me is that I was missing what was there.
Mm.
Right. So I started having a little bit of interaction with some people. And I realized it's like, you need to be hit over the head sometimes. Here you've got a chance to encourage somebody and you're thinking about business. And the real message here is these people need some encouragement. So
Hmm.
I think greatness, to tie that all in, is that we're thinking about where can we be better in life and keep working at it so that we can, you know, we're whatever, making an impact, but just being a good person in a lot of different areas of life. And if you're just good with your business and not great with these other things, to me that's not great. You're a great business person, but it doesn't make you great in life. And I want to be around great in life people.
Yeah, and
Thoughts
that's
on
such
that?
a
What's your thought?
well, it's a very wonderful definition, and it made me start to think of several things. The first is many times, just like you said a second ago, in society, I feel like we have it backwards in the sense that people want to be excellent in business because that's what everybody sees. That fills that ego cup, that fills the pocketbook, it fills all those things, but they allow the life part to go away. The life part is our legacy.
Mm,
The business is irrelevant if the
right.
life part's a mess, because how many of these billionaires have we seen go down in flames because their life was an absolute mess? They didn't have values, they didn't have integrity, they stole from people. So yeah, on the surface it looked like they were highly successful because of the cars, the planes, and the houses. But now their legacy, now that they're gone, is that was a terrible person. I hated to be around him. He wasn't, he or she, wasn't somebody that was, fulfilled. They were miserable and they made everybody around them miserable. And then on the other side, you find those people who have what would look from society a lower job
Mm,
that
yeah.
brings absolute joy to everybody they encounter. I remember there was a lady that she was probably, now that I'm in my 50s, I won't consider her old, but she was older, and this was probably a decade or so ago. But she worked the drive-through window at McDonald's, and Harry, every time I pulled up, I was so excited to see her face
Mm,
because she just had pure joy. And it was, I think she worked like three different jobs because we started having a conversation, and she had kids that she was trying to support, but she just had pure joy. That's the legacy I want to leave.
yeah.
Not that I mean, yeah, I want to help my family, but that money is fleeting.
100%. And you can look at different cultures. Like I lived outside of the country for a couple of years in the Dominican Republic. And, things that I learned is that even the most impoverished people can be incredibly hospitable. And I didn't really come from a hospitable, I mean, I came from New England. You we were like the weather in a lot of ways, right? It was cold and gross out. It was like you just didn't really interact with a lot of people. Some, yes, but there's a lot of us that weren't. And going into the Dominican Republic and seeing the hospitality that everyone offered you food and beverage, no matter what they had. I mean, if they're living literally in a dirt floor shack, they were coming out with a glass of some kind of fruit juice, and it's just, you got to drink it. It's like you can't say no to these people. They're that hospitable. So those people, so it just showed us, it's like, wow, this is all about the way you treat people in life. This
Yes.
is, it's not about the stuff. And right. So we could go on forever, right? But every piece of stuff that we have, everything that we have we don't remember it being important when we're at the end, right? We're going to look for our family,
Mm-hmm.
and that we won't care about anything that's hard, anything that's solid. We won't care about cash. It's only going to be, is my family healthy? Are they loved? Stuff that matters.
Yes. And most people, I've heard this from several different podcasts, several different speakers, just all across everything that I've seen, is that nobody on their deathbed wishes they would have worked harder.
Yeah,
They wish they would have
exactly.
spent more time with their family, that they would have done more for society, that they would have given back more. And it's a valuable lesson that we can take part in today. And like you said, is that we can strive for greatness, by just trying to be better in life. The other part that you shared about going to that assisted living facility was just being an encouragement to other people, but also the resource that those elderly people are. They've
Yeah,
lived amazing lives, regardless of what they did. They've lived for 80 years, 90
right.
years. They have things that we can learn from. And so, and this is, I'm talking to myself, how many times can we encourage them just by going and asking them questions and learning about them and hearing stories of back when and this is what it did, and reminiscing's fun for them, and a lot of them don't have anybody,
Right.
and it's such a really cool opportunity to learn from other people. So over your time, what are some of the valuable lessons that you've learned from people who have been like in front of you, and now you're able to gain wisdom and
Yeah.
knowledge from them?
Well, I mean, so I things that come to mind, like we learn leadership frequently from bad leaders, and we say, oh, I'm not going to be like this. I don't know if this ever happened to you, but I remember when I got into sales leadership, I modeled myself after some good, and I don't want to be like that person. I don't know if that sounds familiar, right? But one of the things I learned is that one of my neighbors in Virginia was a U.S. Army general, and he was a super humble individual, and he led by example. And he would tell me stories about cleaning up, like he went to some base, Army base, that he was the commander, new commander. He wasn't a general at the time; he was like a lieutenant colonel or something, or a colonel. And he said, the place was a mess. And he said, the way I felt like I could make an impact was set the example. So he would go around and, if he saw a cigarette butt or a piece of trash on the ground, he would pick it up. And he says, before long, he says others were doing the same, right? But he says these people were just not used to seeing a leader do that. So leading by example, right? Instead of leading from behind and pushing people. This is what you do. I'm going to sit here in my corner office. Never appealed to me, but seeing people who became very successful in life, because I always liked that servant leadership. I love that. That's kind of the way I thought, but I never felt like that was leading. I felt like that was serving, and I never viewed it as leading. And so when people who wanted the ring kissed, so to speak, came into the room, I was the exact opposite. I would find a place to kind of hide into corner, be around the people, and say, I'm with you guys or gals, right? I am with you. And, I just want to support you, but I'm not going to stand in front with the guy who wants his ring kissed, because I just did not believe in that. So
Mm-hmm.
seeing humility work, to me, that's the best way to lead, and I still put that into practice, and I still work at it. Right? It's just, but I love that humble, servant-minded approach in leadership, and seeing that from others and looking to them as examples. I mean, U.S. Army general commanding. I mean, it was a big number. I forgot exactly what the number was, but
Thousands.
there's a lot of people underneath him.
Mm-hmm.
And to see this person in action with the grace and humility was just not that everyone's like that, because they're not, right? And seeing that is like amazing.
Yeah, and I hope everybody heard what you said, is because so many times greatness is viewed and we may have a different mental image of what greatness looks like. Is it, the one that's standing up that is drawing all the attention? Or is it the meek, humble person that is in the background that probably has more impact? Because they always say, be careful of the quiet ones. But I think many times that we confuse being humble with being weak. And then I also feel like at certain times this is something that I've experienced. I'm curious your thought of when we say that we're humble, that we lose confidence because we feel like, well, I don't want to put myself in a position where I look like I'm being egotistical. So I don't even allow my voice to be heard. What's your thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely truth to that, and I probably um, believe that at one time. Now I observe, the older I get, I'm a lot more slow to speak, um, and I normally let most everyone else speak first, and just sit and watch and listen to what people are saying. And sometimes I don't have to say anything. And I just say, I agree with what so and so said. And there's nothing, and you don't have to make everything you know, a place to die, right? A place, I'm going to stake my spot right here and I'm going to go to battle over this. And it's like most of the stuff we worry about and talk about is not life or death changes, right? So, in that aspect, I feel like I can be humble, I can watch what people say, and if my opinion needs to be voiced, I will voice it because I have the experience and I don't want to hold back if there's going to bring benefit to others, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And that goes back to your definition of greatness. Where can we be better in life? And if you're not helping someone because you have something that you see that you've experienced and you can help them avoid or maximize more effort or maximize the potential, then we have to share that. I think we're, as leaders, as servant leaders, as just another human, I think we're obligated to help our neighbor do something when we see that they can improve. It's just how you go about it. Is it a know-it-all, or is it, hey, I experienced the same thing, and if you would be interested, I'd be happy to share what I learned during that situation.
Yeah, exactly. Good stuff.
Okay. And then you talked about servant leadership, and we talked about, kind of hanging out in the background. And in this, when we talked about earlier about not offending someone and being very careful. So talk to the potential leaders that might be listening, or just, I think, again, as individuals, we can lead the people that we're around. What would be some other things that would help them lead without authority? Because that's where a lot of people also don't feel like that they can, and they're like, well, I'm not their supervisor. So what's your
Mm.
thought and feelings around leading without authority?
I look at it as serving, right? So over the years, um, I would view somebody, if you're viewed as a leader without having the title of the leader, then you're truly the leader. You're truly a leader. When people are coming to you saying, Jeff, what do you think about this? And you're like, you could say, I don't know, right? But they're coming to you because they respect you and you've done something. You've earned some kind of trust enough for them to ask. And if people are looking to you like this, then you're leading without necessarily with the title. And I think that just comes from looking for ways to help others, looking to, to get a project done, if it's in business or you're a parent at a game and you stay around afterwards to help the coaches or pick up the bench stuff on the bench if your kids are in little league. these are all things that people do that are leading, right? Versus the one, and it's not leading like because you want some honor bestowed upon you. You're leading because you're setting the example. This is what we should be doing, right? We should be helping others, make everyone's load lighter. We should be cleaning up. My kids are playing, they're throwing the Gatorades around. Why would we leave this a mess? Why would I leave that to someone else to do because they volunteered? I'm going to go help, right? This is all things that we could do as individuals. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it's just, yeah, that's my
No, it
thought.
definitely does, because we could lead and create positive influence, and we can lead and create a negative influence by just what you said, is by setting the example. And I was listening to The Reel came through today. A friend had posted it, and it was about this man said, I never thought that words from a man in a bathroom in an airport would change my life. I was like,
Oh
that's a
boy.
good hook right there.
Yeah.
So he was talking about how he had just started washing his hands, and there was another gentleman next to him in a really nice suit, really nice haircut, just looked like he was dressed to the nines. And after he was done washing his hands, he had the paper towel and he was wiping the counter. And the
Mm-hmm.
guy said he made a joke, and it's like, so how long have you worked here? And the guy's like, well, you know what? It's one of those things that I just feel like if we can leave this place a little better than we found it, life will
Mm.
be great. And he said
Yep.
that he finished washing his hands because the guy walked away, and he's like, he couldn't get that out of his head that when he was balling up the paper towels after he dried his hands, he realized I can wipe this counter. So it was that man creating the example for him to see. And imagine if we all do that,
Mm.
how this place that we call Earth would be if we
Right.
keep creating a positive example for other people. It's picking up that piece of trash instead of walking past it, putting your grocery cart away, all those things that we see on social media, but they make a difference. And if you're a parent, your kids are watching every move, and you don't have to tell them to pick up trash. But what you can do is be the example that every time you walk by something, you can pick it up.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, just making it better for the next person,
Yeah, I
right?
mean,
When you're out in public and you're thinking about that, it's like, who hasn't gone to whatever, the soda machine, and it's a mess? And then you just say, I'm going to pick up all of these lids and straws here that are scattered all over and just make a quick pass with a napkin or something. Yeah, it's just making it better for the next person. I think that's good, right? And
yeah.
it takes 30 seconds, right?
And it's funny because I started thinking about it. That's like an OCD thing for me. Is when I leave a restaurant, I can't leave crumbs on the table and water rings and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm just weird, and it just so happens that it's actually leaving it better than when I found it. But it's one of those things that, like, I don't think my mom ever told me to do that kind of stuff, but I saw her do those things over and over. And
Mm.
my dad in the toy store of, making it sure all the money is facing in the right direction in the cash drawer, and making
Mm.
sure that everything's nice and tidy and neat. And I just saw him do it. And now that's just something I do. And I'm
Yeah.
waiting for my kids to start doing that. But anyways, maybe at some point that they
It
will.
comes
But
in time. It comes in
yes,
time.
yeah. But it's what you said earlier. It's, being better in life. It's leaving things better than we found it, and being a servant leader. So, like I said at the very beginning, we met, we shared each other's books with one another. And you wrote a book, Selling with Dignity. And dignity is one of those things that I feel like a lot of people hold on to, and whether or not they understand if is it dignity or ego. How would you differentiate dignity from ego or pride?
Well, and the way I use the word is just treating others with respect and honor. So ego in some aspects is you have to have enough ego to have self-respect. Um, but there's also the dark sides of ego that prevent us. So it's like life is pretty amazing. Like this is like there's a lot of great things, but too much of it makes it really bad. Right? So having an ego where you say, look, I've got to have enough self-respect so I can get up and go talk to people in sales. You got to have that ego. But then if your ego goes overboard where you say people are jerks, I just got to sell stuff and I don't care if I offend people, but I'm going to get through people to find people that buy from me. That's the the wrong side of ego, in my opinion. So the whole dignity aspect of it is just treating people with honor and respect, treating the craft of selling with honor and respect. That you don't lie, you don't cheat, you're not a criminal, but you do things above board. So, and then treating yourself, right? Treat others and treating yourself the same way, so that you're not compromising values and you can sleep at night. I've not that I've never made mistakes, because I've made mistakes. I've done things that were a little shady, and I said, no, that's not. I'm not that. That's not who I am. So you stop doing it, right? But you learn. But some people will go down the path of doing something that's a little bit shady, a little gray area, and then it gets more and more like that's now black. It's now we're not gray anymore, and I went over the edge, and it's hard to come back from that. And I've seen people go down that path where they just became, slimy in their sales, like you
Right.
wouldn't want to believe them. So it's this. This is not for those people. It's for people who are servant minded and need to sell, but don't want to come across as being a pushy salesperson.
Sure, sure. Well, in life, we all sell something every day. We sell ideas, we
Exactly.
sell ourselves. What would be some very real world easy tips that you could provide the audience with if they're selling an idea or just selling themselves to each other?
Yeah. Well, I think, before you try to impress your ideas upon people, you need to listen to what the ideas of the other person are. So, like an example, I met somebody who was politically charged at one time and came into a room and was just berating um, one side of the aisle. And I knew that's just not a great way to start a conversation, because it's just so divisive. And I thought, it's like, okay, I now need to, I want to understand this person. So I just said, well, it sounds like you got a lot on your mind. What's the reason for the frustration? And then, the person kind of opened up, and then it's like, wow, it sounds like you've got an interesting story there. And then that led to hearing the person's story. And then, now there was commonality, right? Because now I see the human versus the person that was just angry. And so you see the person inside of this, and then you now can have a conversation. What led to that? That sounds terrible. And before long, with empathy and listening skills, you can now relate to the person, and it opens up a different side of your mind, or a different aspect, and now you're together
Hmm.
versus I'm completely apart from this person. So this goes into, so did I need to sell myself? I didn't. All I did was just break down this barrier by asking questions. And before long, even though we were not anywhere near politically the same, I could understand a lot more from this person and wasn't offended. And this person had I could tell by the change of demeanor that I could ask a few questions, and then it was like, a change of thinking. So that's the longer approach to sales, is you learn about the other person, get what's coming, where they're coming from. And this works at sales, and it works in relationships. It's like, if we're really quick to get our opinion across and we say, well, I gotta, share what I believe here before it's time, you just become another divisive person. Right. But once you become relatable and get in the mix and you understand where they're coming from, now you can say things like, that's an interesting viewpoint, and I get it, right? I've never experienced what you just shared. I can't even imagine it. And then they might say, well, what's your thought? And I said, well, my thoughts are a little bit different, but let me explain why. And this is where I come from. And you're together hearing each other's story. And the person's like, I never knew that. I never even heard about that. Right. So, yeah, I find it amazing. Right. But this works in business and it works everywhere. Right. It works for your family, spouse, meeting new people, make it about them, have conversations, learn about them. And then when they ask you about you, you get a chance to share what your values and beliefs are, or what your product is, or what makes you special. But it's done with people asking versus you self-promoting.
Yeah, and that's wonderful advice. And empathy is that one piece that so many of us don't use on a regular basis. And it's a skill that can be developed. It's listening to understand, listening to hear, not to respond. And we need to understand, regardless of the reaction of the other person, that reaction is coming from probably years of experiences, good or bad. And if they lash out at you, it may not be you, it may be them protecting themselves because of past experiences. It doesn't mean that they're right in reacting that way. It's just part of it. And I feel like that's where we need to have more empathy and understand, hey, I don't know how that would feel, just like you said. And I can only imagine. And then you just continue to go through that. And then you hope over time, like you said, is that you create this open minded relationship between the two of, Harry's got his position, I have my position, but we can still be friends even if they're polar opposite. And we
Yeah.
can still find commonality. We can learn from one another. And that's where I don't see the world at right now. It's either you're all in or you're all out. Either you're for me or you're against me. And that's just not the way it should be, in my opinion.
No. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So when we have conversations, this is the thing that cracks me up. Let's get it out in the open. Trump versus Biden. That's what's going on in the United States right now at this time. Okay. And it's like you're for one or the other. It's very difficult to be in the middle, but a lot of us are in the middle. And we may vote one way or another, but really our values are in the middle generally. So this is why people say things along the lines of you've got to go to one extreme to get the base fired up, but then you govern from the middle. And, years ago, this is the way governments ran. And there are discussions between Republicans and Democrats in Congress and in the Senate, and they work together. I mean, so you look back at some of these older clips in the 70s and 80s of these politicians, and they were political because it meant that they were making some compromises because they were doing things politically to get things done. So does that happen anymore? Yes, but it doesn't nearly happen in government.
Yeah.
Right? It happens, in my mind, it happens more in nonprofits and charities, community events. Nobody is asking what your political views are. If you're helping the homeless people, there's Republicans and Democrats that are helping the homeless people.
Mm-hmm.
If you're helping the hungry, if you're helping, whatever organization, no one's asking about your political views, right? You just roll up the sleeves and you get out, and it's like, I don't care. This is a nice person. And what do you do? What's your family like? It's like, where are you from? And you ask all these questions. You're not saying, what's your politics, right? But the politics get front line because they're super divisive and it gets people charged up. And this is really, in my opinion, what sells. We used to sell newspapers, now it sells advertising. But you get behind this. It's like years ago, maybe raise your hand if you tell me you want me to stop. But years ago, in the 70s and 80s, Cold War era, the Russians were the bad people.
Mm-hmm.
They were nasty, bad Russians, right? My wife and I went to Russia, and it was like, these are the friendliest people we ever. It's crazy. These people are so nice. Now, what did I become a communist? No, but maybe the form of government wasn't great. It's not what I loved about the government, but the people themselves were not the issue. And this is frequently what happens is it gets like we start blaming the people for the views of the government. It's like, no, the people are like us. And these are great things that I've learned is that it's never about the people in general want to get along. We all want to get along. We don't want to like take up weapons, start shooting each other. We want to get along, and we want to take care of each other and do the good for each other and make the world be in a peaceful place with our neighbors. But there are divisive influences out there, and I think if we are observant of that and aware of it, we can say, "I just don't want to be part of that." And that's kind of the choice I make.
Yeah,
Sorry.
great. No, not at all. I didn't want you to stop because it's things that we need to listen and hear and then apply. And the more we can, again, going back to what your definition of greatness is, the more we can be better in life, the better life will be. And making sure that you treat people with dignity and respect, that you play the long game. It's not about what can I get from Harry today. It's how can we create a relationship that's lasting, that's beneficial for both, and that we have a good time. And that's what that life is all about, in my opinion. And like you said earlier, when we're at our deathbed, that's what you remember. That's what you want to remember. That's the legacy that you want to leave behind, is that you impacted people in a positive way, that they think fondly of you after you're gone. And and it's a good way to live. It's like, how will people feel about me when I'm gone? How will my family feel about me when I'm gone? And if that doesn't impact what you do every day and how you treat everybody every day, I'm not sure if anything else will, because I want to leave a positive impact on the world.
I like it. I agree.
So I want to be very respectful of your time. I knew this would fly by. So what would be some parting words that you want to leave the audience today?
Well, I'm going to go with keep working on yourself and don't worry so much about the other people in your life working on themselves. You know, when you figure it out, as you figure it out, we cannot change other people. We can only change ourselves. And that job is hard enough. But if you want your kids to be a certain way, you want a spouse to be a certain way, you want your employees to be a certain way, I'd say, or your clients, you look in the mirror and say, am I being the best that I can? And one of the things that you'll recognize when you're being the best that you can be, is that we don't get to choose how others live. They get to make that choice. Everyone is their own independent person, gets to make that choice. And the best thing to do is to work on ourselves. So that's my parting thoughts based on our conversation.
Amen. And if you're watching this, I was nodding the whole time because it's so good. And I know that the audience will find value. They will have been impacted in a positive way. So Harry, how can people find and follow you?
Yeah. I guess the best way, if this resonates with you and you need some guidance on the sales side of things, or just you're curious about these beliefs, it's Harry Chat, CHAT, Harry Chat, one word, .com, harrychat.com. You'll find a landing page where you can get more about me and schedule a meeting if you want.
Yep. And he's very active on LinkedIn and provides a lot of benefit and lives and a lot of different things that I would highly recommend everybody go over there and follow him. And then he puts up his 1 minute with Harry on Instagram, and they're great reels and they're a lot of fun, and he's consistent. That is one thing that Harry is consistent. So Harry, thank you. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. Hang on 1 second. Everybody, Harry Spaight.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Pathways to Greatness podcast. We hope that today's conversation inspired you to take steps towards your own greatness. Remember, every journey starts with a single step. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might benefit. Actually, share it with 3 people that you might think it might benefit. Until next time, keep pursuing your passions and carving your own path to greatness. Take care.